My pick for number 5 this month is a Voiceless Voice, and I will also be influenced a bit from what just happened at the World Championship, the decks that performed there to a good part, but also my experience on the ladder and what we are seeing on Master Meta as well as on Untapped GG being the most prominent and represented decks. I think Voiceless Voice is in kind of a nice situation. I have tagged in some Bestials here because I think Bestials in the current format are quite nice, especially also against decks like Voiceless Voice. Voiceless Voice just plays nicely into Max C, which is actually quite a big thing. This is also what Tearlaments was really nice at in the past and obviously still is, because you can still make the kit colors play. But I think Voiceless Voice with the ability to play quite an okay amount of non-engine in the deck, and then the engine being quite strong, is a deck that is situated quite well. And on the ladder at the current moment we are seeing a less and less fire decks, not because fire is a bad deck somehow, but because people are, I think, tired of the deck. We are seeing less Duel decks, even though this is definitely of the stronger decks one of the most represented ones, especially in Master 1. But there are also a lot of Tearlaments decks running around, a lot of voiceless decks, and this is why I think the Bestials are nicely placed right now, also against Duel, obviously not against Fire King, but the Fire King matchup is definitely not that great. The Duel matchup unfortunately also not great, but as I already said and argued, I don't really see them on the ladder a lot right now. If you can get into the grind game with this deck, this has one of the best grind games by the ability to get cards back from the blessing of the Voiceless Voice. Obviously a very expensive deck. You put in another Sour Harvest if you had one, just to have the protection from being impermed or effect vadered, the Low or the Skull Guardian protecting from the Sour Harvest. This is quite nice, but all in all a very solid deck in terms of going first, an okay deck in terms of going second. Going second definitely being a weak point of the deck, but the ability to play into Max C, very nice, and something that only a few decks can do as well as can Voiceless Voice. As I already said, you could also argue that a Labyrinth could here, that something like Branded Despia could here, but I am picking Voiceless Voice for my top on number 5 spot. For my number 4 spot, I have Tearlaments here. Tearlaments being back in the meta somehow. A lot of people playing Tearlaments right now. There are obviously different variants, different builds that you can play. I have a 40 list here, which is basically the list that was played at the World Championship from Quantal. You also can copy Jesse Cotton's list, which is a 60 grass list with a lot of ultra rares. If you have them, you can obviously play that. We are playing the Horus engine here with 2 King Sarcophagus, and then obviously you can change out stuff like the triple tactics talents. There has not really been a lot of change concerning the Tearlaments deck, no real additions, but also no like cards being on the Forbidden or Limited list. It's just that a lot of people picked it up again. I also picked it up and realized that it's still quite a strong deck. The ability to, as well as Voiceless Voice, play into Max C quite well with your kit colors, into your Saliak set play, and then having the ability to use Saliak as a monster negate on your opponent's turn and send the kit colors away to mill 5. But just the case that we still have kit colors. I have recently talked with a friend about whether Tearlaments is better in TCG, where they basically still have Merly, they have triple Saliak, they have triple Tearlaments Kashtira, extremely strong, but they are missing the kit colors. And for some reason I think that the kit colors is definitely the more impactful card, kit colors being the core thing of the deck, the monster that you want to summon every turn. Here you can also combine this with cards like the Kashtira Fenrir, which is always strong into an opponent's boards. And this is also why once again the Bestials are very strong, because at the ladder right now in a Master and also in Diamond you are seeing a lot of Tearlaments players, a lot of Voiceless players, Jubel, so put in your Bestials. It's definitely Bestial time. But I think this deck is not only really fun, but also can make an impressive board going first, and is also quite strong playing second tier. As you can see, we don't have a lot of hand traps in here. We only have these Max Cs and then these Forbidden Droplets and the talents going second. This you can also put out these talents if you don't have them and put in something else. If you have another Scream, you can also put in the additional Scream. I just lack it, unfortunately, but this deck can, without a lot of cards, play quite nicely into a board because the engine is just so strong, which is why I picked it here for the top 4 spot. At 3, I have a deck that I have never had on this list, but I think that in the current meta, exclamation mark, in the current meta, it is quite well situated because we have a lot of Bestials just as part of the engine, you could say. Obviously, Centurion is the main engine in Centurion, but you also play a lot of Bestials. In this case, I'm playing triple Bestial Lobelion to search the other ones, and then we are playing triple, once again, being a 3 Bestial Druid's Worm, and then 1 Magnamut, 1 Baldrake. Obviously, you could also, bump down the Bestials a bit and play other hand traps. But what makes Centurion quite nice, besides the Bestials that I just mentioned, I think I have made the point clear that Bestials in the current meta are quite nice, is the fact that you can play a lot of non-engine. We have triple Effect Villa, triple Maxi, triple Ash Blossom. Then we have, the Bestials are basically engines, so don't really count. Then we have 9 cards. We have the pot 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. We have basically 16 non-engine cards, 16 hand trap-ish consistency cards, and that is actually quite a lot. This is very effective. And then you also have a lot of starters. We have 3 Trudea, which is a starter. We have 3 Primera and 3 Oath, and then 2 Bonfires. You don't need to play the Bonfires, but this makes it more consistent. And obviously we also have the stand-up Centurion, so a lot of starters. And somehow the Pot of Prosperity is also a starter, because it's very unlikely revealing 6 of your deck that you will not either reveal Trudea, Primera, Centurion, or the Emblema Oath. Very fun strategy, very strong in going first, but also a nice grind game if you can get the Cosmic Blazer out. If you have this Red Dragon Archfiend boss monster here, you can also put this one in because it's quite strong. I just didn't want to craft it, and I don't think that you need to craft this, because you will have to decide mostly whether you want to make a Cosmic Blazer Dragon or this Red Super Dragon Archfiend Nova guy. So go ahead and decide what you want to make there. I don't think you need both. Then again, it's not the most, it's not the cheapest deck, and I think that in future metas it could definitely be weaker. So if, for example, we would have to play in a full fire meta, then Centurion would be worse than it is right now. But that's not the case, and we always have to take a look at the deck in terms of which meta environment they are currently played in. And I also think that Centurion is quite a nice future investment, as this will get very nice support cards and will always benefit from new synchro monsters being added to the game. So my number 3 pick for this month is Centurion. And for number 2 and 1, I think there is no big surprise here. In my opinion, Duel is the second best deck, an extremely powerful deck with very strong starters. We have a lot of starters, we have a lot of follow-up. We can make one of the strongest play in the entire game with the Phantom of Duel, just summoning it, maybe just from your hand if you have the stuff already, but you can also use your Nightmare Throne to get to your Phantom of Duel. You can put so many bodies on the board and end up on the strongest board, in my opinion, in the entire game. If you end up on your Appaloosa together with the Phantom of Duel, and then your Sword of Rage, as well as Destruction here, and then also the ability. There's something else on the end board. You can always, or you can most of the time also end up with some Samsara Lotus for an additional monster negate. This is, in my opinion, the best board that can be put up by any deck right now, besides the pendulum decks that can, for example, make even more impressive boards, or for example Infernoble Knight, which if it is uninterrupted is also very strong. But these are not decks that can rival a Duel in terms of a general power level. Very strong. We still have this opening of the Spirit Gates at 3, which is in at 1 in TTCG at the current moment. Very strong, because if you start with your Spirit of Duel in hand, then you can just get it to the grave with the opening of the Spirit Gate. We have this very nice Dark Beckoning Beast engine that makes the deck even more consistent, and we can play a considerable amount of non-engine, which is always something to have a strong deck, to basically make a strong deck. We have a few Bestials here. These can be interchanged against other hand traps, but I like the Bestials, as I have pointed out already. And the follow-up of this deck, the grind game of this deck, is really nice. You just have to get used to how the deck plays and also how the deck wants to finish games, because this is a bit unintuitive, because you have these 0 attack monsters here. But other than that, this is powerful going first. This is quite nice going second. And the World Championship actually showed us the stats that going second with this deck, though it sometimes might seem a bit weaker, is actually not that bad. The going second win rate of Duel was quite nice. My pick for number 2 here, Duel. And obviously my number 1, you know it already, we have Fire King Snake Eyes, definitely still the strongest deck, one of the best going first turns, not as strong as an end board that Duel normally creates, but we have way more extenders here. We have the Snake Eye Ash. If you imperm a Snake Eye Ash, I could have a Bonfire for a Poplar. If you imperm this, I could have a Diabellstar, and in the future there will only be more plays available to this deck. We might then not play it with the Fire King engine, but once again, pure, I don't know, we will see. But this is just an insane deck. The going second power of this deck is also the best in the game at the moment, besides complete going second deck like Ancient Gear or Temper Dragon in the future. But this Zealantis Raging Phoenix combo is just insane. The follow-up, you have automatic follow-up with your normal combo because you have your original Sinful Spoils in the grave, and this follow-up can basically generate you the entire board once again, which is crazy. You have your interruptions in the graveyard, so they can't be interacted with in form of your Promethean Princess, in the form of your Garunix that can summon a monster, negate out, and then destroy something. This deck basically does it all. This deck does going first best and also does going second best. It's quite consistent, not as consistent as other decks I just mentioned here, like Centurion. This definitely has to be said. The consistently hits that this deck has endured over the time have definitely worked. This needs to be said. But then again, you rarely ever brick, and you can also just establish, for example, the Fire King engine. If you only have a part or access to your Fire King part of the deck, then this also can be enough because it's just so strong. A good follow-up, good going first, good going second. This deck can do it all, and therefore it is still the strongest deck, and it was also the most played deck at World Championships. People were giving the best players on their teams this deck. People were giving the most powerful cards because you basically were limited with the most powerful cards. They gave it to the Fire King Snake Eyes list so that they could play a full power Fire King Snake Eyes deck. And yeah, the top players realized what I also realized. This is just the best deck. You can also feel it when you play it, in my opinion. And so Fire King Snake Eyes once again takes the first place. And it seems kind of unlikely that we will see any more hits to this deck. At least currently, Konami just doesn't want to touch this somehow. Maybe they have the in-game data and can see that it is quite fair. Or maybe it is because you don't really see this deck on ladder anymore. People are fed up with Snake Eyes. They don't want to play it anymore. And yeah, it's not on the ladder anymore. So sometimes you don't need to ban this to really destroy a strong deck, but sometimes you just need to get people so pissed off basically that they don't want to play it anymore, and then you don't face it anymore. And this is the situation we are currently in. My number one, Fire King Snake Eyes here for September. Let me know in the comments what you think. What is your top 5? Where would you agree? Where would you disagree with me? Thanks for being here. If you like my videos, please consider subscribing, hitting the thumbs up and the notification bell, and we will see each other in the next one.